Hello, guys. Welcome back to one more episode of the City Airport Search iOS application, which is built using RxSwift and MVVM coordinator architecture. So, where do we right now stand? So, whatever we have done right now is that we are fetching all the airports around the world using a service and making a call to a server and getting those data back. We are not done anything more than that, and we have this user interface ready where we can start searching for something, but we already have the data, but we're not done those data binding yet. So that's what we are going to do in this episode, starting with actually retaining the the response data, like whatever you are right now in these, whatever is returned as an airport, you'll be retaining it within the view model. But if it makes sense for you that it needs to be actually distributed in other modules, then maybe it will also make sense for you to retain it within the airport service itself. But in this case, because it's just 3 screen application, I'm going to retain it within the view model, search city view model. So let's start with that. So first thing that we are going to do is whatever that is being returned here, we are going to retain it inside something called as a behavior relay. So let's get started. So we have the data here as coming back as airports, so we can just store that in or retain that in property. So let's create something called as a state. Go back here. I'm going to create a type alias called state. This is nothing but just handling the states within some RxSwift observable objects. So whatever we are receiving here, it's airports, and I'm going to retain that using something called as a behavior relay. So for that, I need to import Rx relay. So once that's done, behavior relay, this is nothing but an observable which can actually do a couple of things, like it can act as a subscriber and it can also accept signals. So that's my publish relay. So one of the things I like about publish relay is that it can replay your last value. There are two things. Okay, it's behavior relay. I'm talking about the behavior relay. Publish relay is something which can also be used to maintain the states. Behavior relay at least lets you replay the last value, but publish relay does not do that. So whenever a new signal is received, and if you're already subscribed, then you can start receiving those signals. So behavior relay at least can replay your last state whenever you just subscribe to it. That's the reason I'm gonna use behavior relay, because it can play back whole of that last state, which is might be in this case an array of airport models being replayed back to wherever it needs to be. So whatever I'm gonna create here is a behavior relay of set of airport model. So airport model is something we had created in our last episode. Just show you. So while parsing our data, we were parsing it as airport's response, which is nothing but an array of airport model. So if you want to understand what was done there, you check back on the last episode, the third one, and you'll understand how it was working. So our service has already returned airport model using this codable, it carrying all these properties, values to these properties. Also, I had explained that I have implemented hashable, mostly hashable, equatable comes along with it, so that I can identify and at least avoid duplicates. So if you are having a set, so hashable implementation is done just because I can use a set to actually carry this airport models in whole of that array which is coming back in this service. So that's the intention. So I have this state defined now. Let me also create an instance of that state. Private let state of type state. Let me instantiate that. So this might need at least 2 values. Airport, airports, behavior relay, instantiate, and it is going to ask me for at least one value. The initial value will last to. So the value, it is of this specific type. So let me also define the type, and I can just pass an empty array to the set. That is the initialization I have done for this. So I have now created a state state variable for my search city view model. So how am I gonna use it? You'll come to know in a bit. So I'm gonna use this state, pass it to as a closure. Within this closure, this state, and whatever I'm gonna do is whatever is being returned here, I'm just gonna grab that and then store it within the state. So this is where the value is coming back. So it is coming back as an array. So I need to convert it as into state and then pass to the convert it into a set and then pass it into onto this state behavior relay which I have created. So let me just map the response mapping will come back as $0, which is actually an array. If you look at it, if you just want to see, it's coming as an airport model array. So that's what I'm receiving as $0 here. Now I need to convert it into a set. It's pretty simple. Just pass this array to a set. That will make it into an array to a set, converted array to a set. And now I just need to, I don't need this because that was happening right here. So I have accepted that as a set. Now I'm going to use this state dot airports. I'm going to accept that set here, $0. This should be fine. So that's done here. You're making that request, airport fetch request, mapping it into a set, and then sending it to the state airports, which is accepted by the behavior relay. So now your value is available within this airports behavior relay. So whatever is now subscribed to these airports, let's say if you're converting into a driver or something and an observable, then if anything is subscribed to this, then they are going to get those values as soon as this value is received here. So that's why I have created this airport service, fetch airports, converted into a set, passed it into the state property airports, accepted here. So now as soon as the app is launched, when the init through view did load happens, it gives a call to the airport service, gets that data into this, and that state is handled here itself. So that's done now. So we have now the airport, all the airports available as a set. Now I have the state values being available on launch. Let's now start doing the next thing, which is I'm not going to load this state table view yet, but let's start implementing and see how we can start filtering out those cities, because right now everything is coming back as an array of airports. But whatever feature that we need here is that as soon as I start searching here, it needs to list out all the cities which are available within that array. So we might have to do a filter out there and then see how we can do that. So let's get started with that, like this search feature. Before even implementing the table view, let's do that and see how the search is going to work. And for that, I'm going to use this input. Input has whatever I need to search the string. So that's a driver right now. I'm going to convert it into an observable. So first thing first. So this, if you want to see where it is coming from, Let's go to the view controller. Binding is happening when the view model is getting instantiated. At that point, I'm setting this search text field Rx property to the search text property, which we had defined as the input type. So if you want to go back and see all that, then you can either watch that previous episode and then understand what's going on there. So this is my view model builder. Okay, let's go back and I'll just show you in a bit. So this is my view model builder. It has an input search text field. It is accepting a type of driver string. So that's what is getting bound here. Search text field rx.text. So that's how the binding is happening. And then once that binding happens, you'll start receiving the value right here. So whenever there is this input value, whenever there is a change, it starts triggering over here. So this is an observable. So because it's a binding architecture, whenever there is a value change, it keeps sending that signals through this. So this is my first observable, which is search text, and I'm going to combine this. Let me just call observable.CombineLatest and then use this along with my other observable, which is actually the state one. State dot airports. So if you go to state.airports, you can see that it's a behavioral relay, and that can be converted into an observable as well. So that's my observable. Observable.CombineLatest input search text, and I'm just combining these two observables, and then I'm gonna map these two values. So values gives me a search key as well as the airports. So maybe I can just keep that as search key and airports array, not array but set. Result I'm not bothered about. I'm going to use these two right now. CombineLatest mapping, and on map, this is where I'm gonna start doing something. So I'm gonna apply we already have the airports here, so I'm gonna apply a filter on that airports dot filter, which will actually give me airport. It should return me a boolean value. Maybe I can keep that so that it's very clear for you like what is happening. So whatever I'm going to do is, first thing first, I'm going to see whether this search key has value or not. Is empty. If it is not empty, it should start returning. If it is empty, then I don't need anything. So this, because that search needs to happen only when I start entering some values. Even you can restrict it like only after you enter the first 3 characters or something, you start applying the filter or something. That also you can apply it if that's your requirement, but I'm not doing that here. I'm just not restricting anything. So my case, I have this airport has its city. I'm going to convert that into the lowercase, so that if you see, this city has uppercase and lowercase, so I don't want to confuse the filter with the search key. Whatever I'm applying, I'm going to keep it as lowercase search. So whatever, even if you're entering as uppercase, will be converted into lowercase here. So that is the lowercase. Also, I'm going to do one more thing, because if you can see here, there is a space between city. If there is a space in city, if your search is not proper, then it might, if I enter mala all lowercase, then it might not search it properly. So I'm going to convert even that to replace occurrences of space with empty, so that my filter is proper. And after that, I'm gonna check prefix of this, whether it is having any of these search key values, and I'm also gonna convert it into the lowercase one. So this is my filter. if search key has any value, and if it has value, and if the airport city has on its prefix the search key, lowercase everything, and if there is an occurrence of space, I'm even considering that. So this is my result of search, which I'm going to return in this map. So that's my map, combining these two observables, mapping it, and then applying a filter. Now it should only start sending me a result set, which will be a set of the filtered array. So let's see whether I'm getting that filtered array right now. So these are my airports. Build print. See, let's print and see. $0. Maybe I just keep it as subscribe for the time's sake. So because we are just testing it right now. Dispose by bag. We'll remove this bag. I've just passed this bag in this function right now, so that I can at least subscribe and see whether things are working. But ideally, once everything is final and once I create that view model out of these model elements, then we should actually send this through the output to the view model so that it can bind that view model to the table view cell. So that will be happening later. Now it's all identifying how this, or implementing how this search text is going to filter on these things. So that's what we are trying to do here. So let's put a breakpoint and see. So once we run this, it's going to print out some initial, it's already applying some filter because there is no entry value being made. So it's just giving me empty signals. So it's going to give me two signals first because of these CombineLatest initial has, both of them has values. So if you see, airports are coming back 3885 values, airports, those are there, but it's always giving me now 0 because there is a filter applied. So it's not letting any airports come through now. That's done. So let's now start searching for something. So you giving me 20 values. That means it has searched through those array and it could identify, see that city MUKAH Mukha. So whatever I'm trying to now search is Mumbai. So as soon as I type this, I guess it should give me, yeah, one value, which is actually for Bombay. Initial earlier code used to be Bombay, now it's Mumbai. So city Mumbai, it's searching now finally. So that's what search is working now. The input, whatever I am entering, it's coming back through properly. So search, this is what the search implementation is. Let's now optimize this because we don't need this. It's firing as soon as you start typing something. So we don't need that. Let's say if you are typing very fast, it need not search through the whole thing. There is no problem here because it's searching through your airport's model array which you have maintained within this view model. But let's say if you're making server calls, it's always good that you apply some throttle on it and also apply a distinct check whenever there is a change. If it is the change is some older value, it need not search for that, and you can always execute this in the background thread. So that's the kind of changes I'm going to do right now. So let's move this to observables outside this. Let me first call this as search text observable, and the second one being airports observable. Now I'm gonna just replace these two here. That's it. And then let's start doing modifications here. First thing, did I say throttle? It should be not throttle, but debounce. Debounce, if you don't know what debounce is and throttle is, then debounce is something where if you keep entering some values within this time duration which you are specifying, let's say if it is milliseconds 300, it's only going to take the last value which after, let's say if you have made some entries, it's going to take that if there is any gap between the first and the second, and if it is more than 300, then it's going to take that last value. But if it falls within this 300 milliseconds, whatever typing entry you're making, let's say if you're typing Mumbai altogether, and if it is one you're doing it in one shot within this 300 milliseconds between each character entry, then it's going to take only the last value, or at least the last signal, which will be in this case Mumbai altogether as a last signal, and then send that as the thing, the signal which will be the search key. So I'm going to pass this debounce here. Also, I'm going to skip the first value so that it does not send any signal as soon as it is subscribed. I'm just skipping that first value. That's the thing I'm doing here, making it as observable. Also, I can do a share on it so that if this is getting used by any other observable to maybe combine or something, then it need not duplicate the same observable at many places. Instead, I can just share one instance and I can just call it as while connected. That means whenever some subscriber connects to this observer, subscription happens, it will start sending signals at that point. So while connected is more like a cold observable. There are two kinds of observables. Hot observable, which keeps sending signals even if it is not subscribed by anybody, or and there is a cold observable. Cold observable is more like it will only start sending signals when there is a subscriber. So subscriber count or reference count has to be more than 0 for it to send some signals. So I'm just keeping it as a cold subscriber here. So that is my search text observable. One more thing I can apply here is DistinctUntilChange. That means if this value, if I type MUM and remove last M, again if I type M, then that becomes a duplicate, so distinct value. So Rx can then identify that I had already entered that value. I don't need to again send a signal for that. So if you are doing within this duration, then it's going to check for that distinct. So this is my first observable, and for the second one, again I can simply do for this case I can just simply do a skip, because I just need to skip the first value and then use that. So those are my two observables. I did that here, and now let's see what is the result of these changes. Let me run. So I'm gonna first type very fast, and it should only give me a result at the within, if I'm typing within that 300 milliseconds, it should only give me one signal. See, it just gave me one signal and one value. It should not fire more than once. So that's what debounce is all about. So if it was throttle, it would have waited for that whole entry to happen, but it will send me 5 signals because I had entered 5 n number of things. So that's the difference between debounce and throttle. So if I, let's say, remove a couple of characters, again going to enter, it's going to send one signal. And if I, let's say, do something like this, it's not going to send any signal, because this is DistinctUntilChange. Now it fires because I had modified it. So if I, let's say, do this again, it's not going to fire because it's again DistinctUntilChange. Now it's fired. So that's the difference. So those things optimizes your code to a great extent, where you don't need to send. If it is actually a server request you are sending, then it's good that you optimize it using all these techniques of Rx, and then make it only send signals as soon after you have maybe not duplicated or anything, or after you have made your complete entry in a search text or something. So that's what I wanted to cover in this episode, where mostly cover how debounce, DistinctUntilChange, skip and all works. Even chair I covered, where it is more like a cold and hot observable things happening here. So with this, I think we are pretty much ready to go to the next episode, where we will start integrating the table view along with the table view cell. So that is going to happen from here, and we will get rid of these things. Instead, we will send it as an output to the view controller, and that will actually make that binding happen with the view models, which we will actually create after this. Like we right now have airport models created. So using that airport model, we will transform it into a airport view model, which will actually become the binding object for your table view cells. So that's something pretty interesting coming up in the next episode. So stay subscribed, watch this episode. If you don't understand something, come back to me and let me know through the messages section. And if you want code access, then go to my Patreon site and get access to that. So until the next episode, it's bye from me.